Many of our users in the hallways talk to me a lot about Twitter, and sometimes they wonder why they tweet something and then somebody doesn't retweet it, or exactly what the favorites does, or why you put a period in front of an at. Well, this video is going to show you exactly what that does and why. You would use those types of things. I'm going to use my Twitter account as an example. For instance, this tweet, I'm a compulsive oversharer, it goes out to anybody that follows me. Anybody that follows me will see this on their homepage. Now, one like this, though, where I replied myself from a different account, at Mr. Troy J. Jones, oh my gosh, me too, it's like a disease. You see how I started off the beginning of that tweet with my @mention? Well, if you do that, it doesn't show up on my feed. It only goes to my @mentions feed. It doesn't show up on my homepage. And because that person, the Mr. Troy Jared Jones, put my username at the beginning, it doesn't show up in his homepage either. So that's a really good thing to think about. That doesn't show up on either person's home feed if you put the @reply at the beginning. The next thing is, a great example is @FBI. How are things on the home front? Well, I sent that to them directly. See how I started off the message with that? Well, notice that it didn't show up in my feed. It's not in there. It's still one from February 16th. And the reason being is because if you put it at the very beginning, by putting another person's username at the start of the statement, it limits who sees it. So, for instance, at myself, or my mom, or at my brother, or at FBI, they don't see that on their homepage, and I don't see that on mine. But people that follow both me and the FBI will see that on their homepage. Does that make sense? If they follow both of you, or, for instance, if the FBI followed me, it would then show up on their homepage. There's a difference between an @mention and where it goes, and that's the trick here. And a great example is if you add something in the middle of it, or the beginning, like, for instance, hey, like I did on this tweet, hey @Troy Jared Jones, you really know about Twitter. That will actually show up on my feed to my followers. And if Troy Jared Jones follows me, then that also shows up on their feed. If they don't follow me, it just goes to their @mentions, but ideally, you would want to have it where they follow you, you follow them, and you do an @reply in the body of the message as opposed to the beginning. If you do it just at the beginning, the @reply only goes to their replies section on their page. It doesn't show up in their feed. It goes basically to the @mentions section of their page. It never shows up to their followers. But if you put it in the middle, not only does it show up on your followers' feed, but it also shows up on theirs if they follow you. Does that make sense? It's kind of weird. What you'll also see is that people insert characters before the in the message, so that the mention goes after another character, and they don't want to waste a lot of space, so they use a period like this. @Troy Jared Jones uses gadgets to help him with Twitter, and then put a hashtag in there. The dot before the mention guarantees that it goes to my feed, Mr. Troy J. Jones's feed, so my followers see it. And because we follow each other, then this also appears on the other feed for me, Troy Jared Jones. So that shows in the feed as well. People that only follow one of us will not see this in their homepage. But because we follow each other, they do. Does that make sense? I know, and it's a little confusing, but not that crazy. The best thing is if you want the other person to see it and your followers to see it, put something before the mention in the tweet. Now, for something like this, where I put an in the beginning and I included someone else in there in the second part. Because we follow each other, first of all, it'll show up in both of our feeds, so I know that. But the other person will also see that as well. So that's something to think about too. Basically, me and Cupcake will see this on our home pages because we follow each other. Now, people that follow me and Cupcake, both of us will see that on their homepage as well. Now, only the first user mentioned at the beginning of my username control who sees the tweet. So, for instance, if I put his first, if he doesn't follow both accounts, he won't see both groups that follow both of us won't see it. Does that make any sense? It's a little strange and a little cumbersome, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Moving on to replies, likes, and retweets. So if you reply to that, by the way, if you replied to one of those, then it would only go into a string between the two of us. If you put the @reply at the beginning, then the replies don't show up on the home feed. However, if you don't put the @reply at the beginning and put it in the body of the tweet, the replies also show up on the feed, which is kind of neat, so you can see conversations going back and forth on the person's Twitter home feed. Now, let's talk about retweets. Retweets are, you like something and you want to send it to your followers too, you can just retweet it and it shows up on both. That's the cool part about retweets. That's kind of generic and everybody knows what that means. The likes, however, a lot of people don't really understand what the likes are for. Likes are the little box right here to the right-hand side. The favorite, if you will, it's the like of Twitter. It's favorites. Now, when you click the little favorite star, it does a couple of things. One, if you favorite things on your Twitter feed, it is going to show you more of those things in your Twitter feed that contain similar words, hashtags, and at mentions. So if you favorite those, it'll show up more on your feed. Second thing is, if you favorite it, you can actually, on your home Twitter page, go to all the things you've favorited so far and look at those things too. So it kind of works as a save for later, which is really spiffy. Direct messaging still works, but we don't really use that a lot unless it's something in between. A great example is one of the tweets that I sent out. This documentary is pretty fake. The Walking Dead. Who mows the hashtag The Walking Dead. Who mows the hashtag Who mows the grass. Hashtag Daryl better get laid. Because I hashtagged The Walking Dead, Walking Dead Junkies Twitter feed found that because they watch for those hashtags and then favorited that. Now that doesn't show up in their feed, but it gives me an idea that I may want to like their page or follow their page, if that makes any sense. It kind of gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I like that, but I don't want to show it to all my followers. But at the same time, hey, I like a bunch of your stuff. I favorited a bunch of your stuff. You may want to consider following me. So that's a really good example. Hashtags. Let's get into that. Everybody kind of knows what hashtags are for, but here's what I'm going to encourage you to do is to use hashtags in something to make people follow up on what you're hashtagging. A great example that caught a lot of attention was hashtag Why I Hate Instagram. That was one of the big ones that was going on at the time, and you can actually follow the trends of those and include those hashtags in your tweets. This one is a great example of the hashtag at the beginning. It doesn't matter where you put them in the tweet. But if you watch the trends on Twitter, you'll see that the hashtags are all over the place in the tweet itself, but you can follow a group of this particular hashtag to see what's going on and trending. Here's another one, hashtag I grew up watching. This one is, there's an @reply in it as well, but notice it's not at the beginning. So this way, the Ricky Grimes followers see it, and anybody who follows Justin Bieber, if Justin Bieber follows this guy, will see that. Now you can also search for different things too. Here's a great example of hashtags too. Yes, I was born in the 80s. I just found hashtag Airwolf, hashtag Netflix. This actually, this tweet got the attention of Netflix and an Airwolf Twitter account. So both of them picked this up and retweeted this. But it's because I included the hashtags in here. So you want to include hashtags of things of maybe groups or people or other accounts that may be following that. There's some robots that do that too. Like, for instance, a lot of the Reddit feeds have robots that scan for certain things, for certain Reddit accounts. Like, for instance, Lord of the Rings, LOTR. If you do hashtag LOTR, sometimes the Reddit bot will pick up that tweet and retweet it for you. I hope that answers a couple of different things about the @replies, the hashtags, the direct messaging, what the likes or favorites do, and gives you an idea a little bit more about Twitter and how to use it to your advantage. Again, don't put the @reply in the beginning of the tweet if you want as many people to see it as possible. If you want it to just send it to one person, do so. You can use the period @ but that's kind of bad form because everybody kind of knows what you're trying to do when you do that, but it still works. Hashtags, again, use them at your own peril. Don't just fill a bunch of hashtags out like that Jimmy Fallon song. Use the hashtags very sparingly in order to get the attention of certain accounts. That's a really effective way to do that. And, of course, to add a little bit of comedy and sarcasm to things, too, like hashtag who cares. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and it'll be up on my Twitter in just a few. Thanks. P.S. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Mr. Troy J. Jones.